Everyone, a very warm welcome. Today we have with us Dr. Atman Shah. He is assistant professor in the Department of Economics at Xavier's College. And sir has a tremendous amount of effort. He has been putting a tremendous amount of effort to give the best of the knowledge to the students. And I see him very active even on his YouTube channel, and I have seen multiple of his videos, especially those 1 minute economics video, and I think they are very, very useful for the students. So welcome, sir. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for having me here.
And sir, I think
excited to
yes.
Yeah,
I have literally seen a lot of your videos, and I think it is very, very informative for students. And the kind of guest lectures that you do, I saw a guest lecture on game theory, I think so that you have conducted. So it's so nice when professors take one step ahead and they take these initiatives for students.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
So the topic that we are going to go ahead and take today is very, very critical topic. It's very important that students should be aware of this. And especially even if it is for students who are preparing for their civil services, this acts as a very important topic. And the topic of discussion today is going to be critical evaluation of India as the third largest economy. So, sir, over to you. Please go ahead and you can start putting in your important points.
Okay, so when we talk about the size of the economy, we are basically measuring the size of the economy through GDP. So if you look at the GDP numbers, India is the fifth largest economy in 2023, and the size of the Indian economy is $3.75 trillion, and we have just crossed United Kingdom, which has the GDP of $3.1 trillion. And we will become the third largest economy by 27-28. And the size of the Indian economy would be $5.5 trillion as projected by the IMF. So when we are measuring the size of the economy through GDP numbers, or when we put some numbers that we'll achieve this by 27 or by 5 years or by the end of 10 years, but whether these higher GDP numbers actually increasing or actually improving the life of people. So therefore, only GDP numbers will not help us to measure the overall welfare or overall well-being of the country. So look at the GDP per capita numbers. The per capita GDP of UK is $46,000. And per capita GDP of India is only $2,600. So you look at the gap. Let me give you a simple example. We have two houses, house A and house B. The overall GDP of house A, or overall income, the family income of house A is 100 rupees. And overall income of house B is 90 rupees. Now we can say that the income of house A is higher than income of house B.
Right.
But per capita income, suppose there are 10 people in house A and only 5 people in house B. So per capita income of house A is 10 rupees and per capita income of house B is 15 rupees. So that means the standard of living people live in house B is much better or much higher than people who live in house A. So when we talk about the standard of living, we need to look at the GDP per capita numbers instead of analyzing only GDP numbers. So that is the first thing that we need to check, that whether higher GDP numbers actually help us to translate these higher growth rates in overall welfare of the citizen, overall welfare of the people. So this is how we need to analyze when we talk about GDP numbers. then we can have see the inequality. Now, if GDP is increasing, that does not mean that inequality is decreasing.
Right.
So a higher GDP growth rate or GDP numbers do not actually tell us anything about the distribution of the income, right? So how this GDP is distributed among various sections of the society. So income inequality is another important aspect of looking at the development process or overall development of the economy or overall development of the country. So we have the idea of Gini coefficient and Lorentz curve to actually measure the economic inequality. And if you look at the World Bank data, the Gini coefficient for India is 35.7. Now, higher the Gini coefficient, higher the inequality, lower the Gini coefficient, lower the inequality. So for India, it is 35.7. For UK, it is 32.6. So again, if you compare India and UK, inequality is lower in UK than India. But in terms of GDP numbers, we are ahead of the United Kingdom. Japan, it is 32.9, USA 39.7, and Germany 31.7. In 2013-14, India was the 9th largest economy, and we crossed Italy, France, I guess Brazil, and UK. Now, again, if you see the Gini coefficient for countries, European countries, in Italy or in France, the Gini coefficients are lower than India. Right. But in terms of GDP numbers or in terms of GDP, we are ahead of some of the European countries. So that is another aspect, that how this GDP is distributed among various sections of the society or among people. Then we have the idea of poverty. So whether this higher GDP growth rate actually help you to reduce the poverty. So whether the fruits of higher GDP growth rates reach to the poor sections of the society or not. So again, you see the data. So I have the data on poverty headcount ratio at $2.15 a day for 2017 purchasing power parity, and it is available on World Bank data. So for India, it is 10. The poverty headcount ratio is 10. Right? For Brazil, it is 5.8. Italy, 0.8. France, 0.1. Germany, 0. Japan, 0.7. USA, 0.2. United Kingdom, 0.5. So you compare first 10 countries in terms of GDP and their poverty ratios. Right. Right. So again, the question arises that how should we measure the overall welfare of the economy or overall well-being of the country? Only GDP will not help you to GDP will not give you the exact picture. GDP is one of the measurements through which we can see the prosperity or whether we are having better standard of living, but only GDP will not help you to analyze the entire or analyze the macro picture. So even if you compare India's per capita GDP with Bangladesh per capita GDP is higher than India. Right? India was ranked 146th in terms of per capita GDP, and Bangladesh was ranked, I think, 142nd or 140th in terms of per capita GDP. So when you are comparing two economies, you need to discount the population factor. I think there is no reason to compare absolute numbers. Right. Right. Otherwise, you have huge population and therefore you bound to have higher GDP, assuming other things constant. So it is better to compare per capita GDP instead of only GDP. I am not saying that higher GDP numbers are not important. If we have higher GDP numbers, that means the production of goods and services is increasing in the economy. So that's a good sign. But whether this will help you to solve some other problems, some other economic problems such as mass unemployment or poverty or economic inequality. If you see various reports of economic inequality or wealth inequality, all reports say that the income and wealth inequality in India has been increasing.
Right.
Since last 10 years or 20 years.
So I have a question here, sir. So we usually talk about demographic dividend, and we say that when the country is developing, we bound to have an increase in the population, but we hit the highest point and then the population starts decreasing. So when we maybe are thinking about 2027, there would be a chance that we are going from developing towards developed, and the population will start decreasing, thereby increasing the real GDP. So can we account for the fact that there is a chance that the real GDP will in fact increase because the population will start decreasing as we become developed nation? Currently, of course, we are outpassing China. I mean, we have the highest population, but as we become developed, do you think that the real GDP will in fact start increasing as population goes ahead and decreases in the long run?
See, the definition of developed and developing nations, again, completely, the countries are bifurcated based on income level only, GDP level only. So when you say some countries are developed and some countries are developing, or some countries are least developed countries, we are measuring these in terms of GDP only. We are not considering other important variables or parameters to measure the development of the particular economy or a particular country. Now, coming back to your question, whether population is affecting the GDP growth rate or whether we have the increase in the real GDP growth rate or not. But if you see the population estimates, I don't think the population, the actual population will decline by 27-28 because the growth rate is positive. And it is expected to have steady population growth rate by 2050, if I'm not wrong. But real GDP growth rate of 6 to 7% is required to achieve this $5.5 trillion mark, or to become the third largest economy by 27-28. Now, if you look at the GDP growth rate numbers, in 21-22, India's GDP growth rate, the real GDP growth rate was 9.1%. In 2022-23, the growth rate was 7.2%. And in 23-24, the expected growth rate is 6%. So if you see the trend, the growth rate has been declining. However, economists are positive that after this pandemic, the 6 or 7% growth rate is new normal, and we required 6 to 7% growth rate to achieve to become the world's third largest economy. But assuming that you don't have any policy shocks like demonetization, GST, otherwise the growth rate would be, or growth rate may decline, which will hamper the GDP growth rate.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, this is how we can analyze. So the thing here I want to say is, when we analyze the economy, or when we analyze the economic development of a particular country, let's not restrict ourselves to GDP numbers only. There are so many dimensions of development, and you see the per capita numbers, GDP per capita numbers. Some of the Gulf countries have much higher GDP per capita than even European countries or USA or UK. But you see the condition of those countries, right? Whether you look at the gender disparity,
Hmm.
or whether you look at the human rights issues or democratic values or constitutional rights or rights of women or rights of vulnerable sections of the society, they do not have such environment, such economic or political environment.
Right.
Those dimensions of development also play a vital role in analyzing the a particular economy or economic development of a particular country.
Right.
So let's not restrict ourselves to GDP numbers only. GDP is important. We are not saying that the GDP is not good for the or higher GDP numbers are not good for the economy. They are important. GDP is important because it is associated with the production of goods and services. But there are other parameters, there are other dimensions of development which need to be considered when we analyze the or when we analyze the macro picture of a particular economy. Even you can see the literacy rate numbers of these countries. Literacy rate in India, and compare India's literacy rate with France or Italy or Japan, right? Or some health indicators, how many beds are available per 1,000 population, or stunted or wasted children in India. So these numbers are really horrifying. So health indicators, education indicators, or whether we have the drinking water facility, or whether we have enough sanitation facilities. These are some basic things which needs to be there when we talk about becoming the world's third largest economy by 27-28. So I mean, yes, we need to check these parameters also.
Right. So, but would it be wrong to say that development only follows after an economy goes through growth? I mean, growth is always in terms of GDP, and development is overall, as you mentioned, with other factors.
Yes.
But development is only after growth takes place, or should an economy be first focusing on development and growth will follow? I mean, what process should the economy follow? Should it first focus on increasing GDP and then other factors will follow, or other factors should first be given priority?
Even God does not know these answers. So that is always ongoing debate in economics, whether you should focus on GDP numbers or income or some other factor. So there is no clear-cut yes or no answer for this question. But I think we should not avoid other parameters. You cannot avoid education or health or some other parameters, and you can only focus on GDP numbers. That is not good for the economy, right? If you see some highly capitalist economies, even they are giving basic education free to their citizens.
Right.
Normally what we say, if we have the capitalist structure, we are talking about minimum government intervention, minimum state intervention. But high capitalist economies also provide free education and free health services to their citizens. Even if you see these corona packages of various economies, capitalist economies or socialist economies or communist structures, all economies have provided, all governments have provided economic packages to the vulnerable sections of the society. Right? So, I mean, you cannot only focus on GDP numbers. That is not good for the society, or even not good for the GDP. If you do not have skilled workers, if you do not have healthy workers, how will you increase the GDP? Because to produce goods and services, you need workers. You need skilled workers. And if you see this China-India debate, that why companies went to China, because Chinese workers are more skilled than Indian workers. You look at the education parameters and compare India and China. So that clearly shows that Chinese workers are more skilled than Indian workers. So if you want to increase the the growth, or if you want to not growth, the production of goods and services, you need to invest in people, you
Human
need to
capital.
invest in workers. So
Right.
you give education, you provide health facilities so that they can work more efficiently.
Right.
But that can be direct or indirect, and that is the basic debate, whether government should directly involved in providing such social infrastructure or not.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Completely agreed, sir. Rightly pointed out, sir. So even though we may say that India is on a path of growth, we are way away from a complete path of development. We need to focus on other factors also before we can claim that, we are going to become the third largest or even the largest in some time, largest economy. Uh, Thank you so much, sir, for your time.
Thank you.
I think it was a very, very insightful session, and I have all these points in my mind. I think so I can even write an answer on it. It's that useful. So it was a great session, sir, and we would love to have you sometime again with another
Sure,
insightful sessions in
definitely.
the
Thank you
future.
so much for having me here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.